Good morning, guys. This is View from the Pew. It is Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. We're continuing to look at Christ's commands in the Gospel of Mark. And just a brief one today, but as I was reading through from about Mark 14:39, where I left off yesterday, I noticed this one statement that Jesus makes. And I'd ask you to think about how this has modern application today. I want you to remember that we're in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus has been praying that he would turn his will to the Father's will, and that he's come to that conclusion, I believe, through the prayer time, that he's basically said, okay, Lord, it's time. I'm ready to go. Father, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go die for what we've planned to do this whole time. So the first two times he comes back and sees his followers, he tells them to stay there and watch, to sit with him, to watch and pray, because the spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. But then the third time when he comes back, there's a confluence of events that occurs. He's not only coming to them, but there's a crowd coming to them as well, led by Judas. And I guess the chief priests and scribes and the elders and folks carrying swords and clubs to arrest him or to seize him. There was nothing just about Jesus' arrest. Let me just read to you from 39, and 42 is where the command to his followers is. And I just want to encourage you, think about if this is application for us today. Again, he went away and prayed and spoke the same words. And when he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, and they did not know what to answer him. I wouldn't either. Then he came a third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? It is enough. The hour has come. Behold, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." There is a time for praying. There's a time for staying. There's a time for sitting. There's a time for watching. But then there's a time for getting up. And you'll know when that time is. For Jesus, the time had come when the matter was settled in his head and the crowd was coming to get him, that it was no longer time to be on your knees in prayer. It was time to get up and deal with the circumstances at hand, or accept the consequences at hand. I think about David and the fact that David, when he had sinned against Bathsheba and Uriah and ultimately against the Lord, how the child that Bathsheba had from that relationship became sick to the point of death. And during that time, while that child was sick, David fasted, he prayed, he did everything he could in the same sense that our Lord did, just pouring himself out to God that God might spare the child. But once the child was dead, David got up. And David makes a comment because they asked him, "Why did you get up?" And he said, "Well, while the child was still alive, there was still hope. But once the child has passed, then I have to move on to the next thing." In a sense, David had to rise and get going. He had to turn the page, from praying to doing. And there does come a time in our lives when we've been praying, and we may continue to pray to some degree, but you got to rise. You got to get up from your praying state and go live in the consequences of what you're dealing with, knowing that God is in control. You've got to get up from your praying state. You've got to go live in the consequences of the circumstances you're in, knowing that God is in control. You've done your praying like the Lord did in Gethsemane, like David did with regard to Bathsheba. And you've got to get up. Now's the time to get up. Now's the time to get going. Now's the time to confront the consequences of these prayers that you've made and the result of that praying, and get about the business. And that's what Jesus said. He said, time for waiting is over. The time for staying and sitting and watching is over. It's time for us to get up and deal with what's next. So maybe there's an application for us with regard to this. it is incredibly important to pray. This Sunday, I'm going to be talking about Daniel's prayer in Daniel 9 for the nation, and how powerful that prayer is, how important that prayer is. But you know, there's a time to pray, and then there's a time to rise, get up, and accept the consequences of what you're dealing with. Maybe when it comes to our nation, we're praying for revival in our nation, and we do want the church to be revived. But can I also tell you that the state of our nation is a consequence of the sinfulness of its people, and God would be unjust and unrighteous if he did not cause us to suffer consequences for our own sin with regard to this nation. So there is a sense where we almost need to say, let's get up and let's live with this situation. Let's deal with these consequences and let's move forward from here. We won't stop praying for revival, but we're going to rise and get going and deal with the circumstances around us. So I hope that makes sense. It's an interesting command Jesus gives them, and as someone who would be following him, I'm trying to see how it fits into my life, because Jesus told us to teach all he commanded them to do. So let's look for the application and apply it to our lives today. I invite you to join us Wednesday night, 6:15. We're continuing to work through the New Testament and walk through the New Testament. We're in the last part of Luke and fixing to head into John. Boy, it's been a good study as we've worked through the Gospels and continue to do so. So come join us in person or on Facebook. And God bless you. Be safe today. A lot of bad weather out there in our area potentially, especially this afternoon. And you have a great day following Jesus.